Hello, everybody. This is Scotty Peck. I'm so glad you're with us.
And I'm Shannon.
And we're here for the very last session of the Peace Course, Session 8, How to Create a Peace Ending. This is significant.
It's very significant because when you think about it, how many times do you create a peace ending? You know, sometimes after conflict, we're just so glad just to, be talking again. We don't really wrap it up into something very beautiful. And this is an opportunity to really sing a very high note in your life. So we're going to go over that with you today.
Yeah, we sure are. And remember, peace is a moving target.
Yeah.
It's not an outcome. It is a process. And that is true even of the peace ending. Let's be honest. A lot of times when you're, even as a peace master, you're trying to create peace, you need a break because things get too emotional. They're too hot, or people haven't had time to sit in the process long enough to be ready for peace. So, and we're going to talk about this. Sometimes the peace process just breaks down. It's over. And you can still create a peace ending at those times. We're going to cover that. So what does a peace ending mean? I'll tell you what it means to me. It means like a pause in the peace process where you as a peace master are contributing to the possibility of more peace, even though there might be what looks like an end. How does it feel to you?
I think I would ask myself after a conflict and, we've had some words and everything, it's like, is that it? Have we come to the, it's a good internal question. Have we come to the point where we could actually hug each other or smile at each other next time we see each other? Or is it just kind of a standoff and then we'll cool down and never mention it again? But a really great peace ending to me is where you could hug each other. If that's possible, I think it's really important.
So we're going to take these from stages from easy to hard. And let's start with the very easiest of peace endings. And that's where you think you're at peace with the other person.
You think you're at peace, so you got to check it out. You got to test your assumption and just ask them, are we okay now? Are you feeling good? And they might say, well, I'm not feeling great, but at least you've broken that ice, you've melted that down. It's a caring gesture towards their feelings and can we go on from here? It's a good check-in to have that, to test the assumption of peace.
And here's something that's a nuance, but we're dealing with nuances as peace masters all the time. So when you ask somebody, how are you doing today on the street? Of course, they say, fine. But if you ask somebody, well, how are you feeling? Now you're going to get a different potential answer. So like with peace, I might say to Shannon after we've had a little conflict, disagreement, I might say, are we good? Mm-hmm. Now, what do people answer when you say, are we good? 90% of the time, people say yes, whether it's true or not. So I think a stronger way to say, as you were getting at there, is to say, it feels to me like we're at peace. How does it feel to you? Now you're inviting the possibility that there may be more discussion. You may just want it to be over. But remember, the getting the feelings out, you really want justice and unity and forgiveness. So by asking the question, how do you feel? You are creating the opportunity for deeper peace.
Yeah. And you could even ask if they're reluctant. You could just go in a little bit more and say, do we need to talk a little bit more? Or is there something else I can do to help you with the peace process?
So now let's take a slightly more difficult situation.
So I call that the check-in.
All right.
Check-in.
The peace check-in.
Yeah.
Now what happens when the peace process slows down, but there is still good hope for peace? But maybe the parties are just tired or exhausted of talking, or
Yeah.
they've reached their end point. But it's not like the peace process is over.
You might just be a little stuck, you know. Um,
Yeah. So here's something that I wrote down that is kind of like a dialogue that you might want to consider as a peace master. So let's take a break so we can think things through and come back with more freshness. I appreciate all you've done to stick with the peace process. And during this break, maybe we could focus on what might be possible as solutions for each of us that would feel just and fair. And thank you again for showing restraint during this whole process where we're trying to find agreement, and respect.
it's beautiful.
Now, what has that done?
Yeah.
All those words are peace leadership. It's what you as a peace master are. You're taking,
Yeah.
you're not just saying, let's take a different approach and say, you know what, let's say Shannon and I are having a disagreement and it's time, you need a pause. Say, why don't we just take a pause and come back later? That's a whole different emotional
Yeah.
approach than it is to use the words. Because for one thing is, remember, just like envisioning peace, the first peace skill, it didn't depend on another person. It depended only on you. This is interesting that the peace process ends also depending only on you. Doesn't depend on the other person. It's not like, do you want to continue the peace process? Well, don't ask that question because they might say no. You're taking the initiative to create the language, the loving speech, the respect for the other person. I appreciate that we've been able to have this conversation, and I appreciate your restraint and goodwill in trying to move towards peace.
So this is some acknowledging.
It's acknowledging of the other person's goodness.
Mm-hmm.
And there's going to be always something to acknowledge. I appreciate the fact that you're not exploding and that we're talking about this, in reasonable terms. And I think that's going to help us get to peace. I just want you to know I appreciate that.
Yeah.
So you're acknowledging the good that the other person's doing. You're also doing something else. In addition to the acknowledging, you're stating that you think peace is possible.
Yeah, that's big.
Yeah.
Because that's going to give them some hope. It's like, oh, okay.
You haven't given up?
Yeah, you didn't give up and there's still a window and you still like me.
Yeah, it's very, and it's probably most often it will be the peace master who says, I haven't given up in peace, that you may be the only one who hasn't given up on peace. So it's very important to put that in your own words. I hope that when we come back, I know my heart really seeks to have peace for us so that you're happy and I'm happy, and I'm willing to work at that and stick with it until we get there.
This shows goodwill. It shows that I'd like for you to be happy, just like I'd like to be happy. And that's an invitation. Who wouldn't love to feel happy after in conflict? Because we feel guilty, we feel ashamed, like we were part of this, or we contributed to this, or maybe we caused it. And to get to this high level, this is a high note, to be able to reach across the border and express goodwill, that you want a good outcome here.
It also means that as a peace master, you are going to be visible.
Yeah.
You can't hide. This is a leadership position. You can't smile and say, hope that your smile says, I appreciate all you've done and I hope that we get to peace. Those words have to come out. It's loving speech, which is one of our skills. So let's go on to the next worst case. And that is when the peace process feels like it's falling apart. And maybe there's still a hint of hope. Maybe, we don't know, but the peace process is more falling apart. Um, Here are some of the words that, and again, this is just to give you a sense of how you might be thinking as a peace master. You might be saying, I'm sorry that we seem to be at an impasse. We put a lot of energy into finding a solution. And I appreciate the fact that you've listened to what I have to say, and it's been helpful to me to listen to what you have to say. I understand you more. And I'm sorry it's so difficult. I hope you won't lose hope, because even though it doesn't feel like it's possible, I'm not going to give up. I'm not going to lose hope, because to me, peace is the higher road than just leaving this sit there or letting it get worse. I hope you feel that way too.
Yeah. Hey guys, this is really beautiful stuff. Scott is the best peace master I've ever known. I'm actually taking notes on some of the things he's saying here. And I'd like to reflect back where we've come to make it really simple, because this is beautiful language. This is not something that, we're scripted for. So first of all, we test the waters. We say, how are you feeling now? Second, we acknowledge their efforts. And that's a big acknowledgement that they're trying, because it's hard. And third, that you express goodwill. And fourth, you say you're sorry for the impasse, and that it's so hard, and that you still have hope, and you're holding that hope for the relationship. That's simplifying some very beautiful nuances here that Scotty's expressing.
Now, let's be clear about something. It's very difficult to use these words if you're a party to the conflict and you're not in your peace mode.
Oh yeah, don't fake it.
Because you're going to find, but it's so interesting when you are in that conflict. Let's say you're emotionally embroiled yourself, and you remember, oh, I should be creating a peace ending here. Mm-hmm. That's good. You have that thought. And when that thought comes in, it starts changing what's going on in your heart and your consciousness, because you realize, I can't create a peace ending if I'm so angry.
Yeah.
So all of a sudden you start shifting your internal energy, and you'll know that's shifted when you can, you might be even saying to yourself, well, how can I tell Shannon that I appreciate her efforts when I don't appreciate them? This is part of the conflict, well, you have to dig deeper into who you are. You signed up to be a peace master. Do you really think that conflict is a better outcome than peace?
Yeah.
And it only takes one person to move the needle towards the possibility of peace. But two people who move the needle this way, the needle's going to crash.
It takes a strong motivation to have peace, because the feelings are sinking. It's like this energy is going down, and what you need is upward, mobile energies. So these peace endings are very mobilized upward. And if you can get yourself on board, you'll find that it has a momentum of its own that can carry both of you to a better place anyway.
And that's very thoughtful. It doesn't matter whether your words, the outcome of your words is more peace. It could be that saying these things, the other person might say, well, you know what? I've just given up, and I don't think that peace is possible. Have you failed? Not at all, because you created the peace ending, the process of stating that you feel it's possible. And even in that situation, I might say, I'm sorry you feel that way, but I understand it, because there's a big part of me that feels it's not possible either. I'm not going to give up hope.
Yeah. So there's something subtle here that's unstated I want to state. Scotty's using language to the other person that he's trying to create peace. Unless you say that, they might not know what you're doing. They're just thinking about who won, Or are you going to apologize? Or, you know, they're not on that board of thinking about peace, because it's a wonderful word to introduce when there's been conflict at the right time and in the right way. But as they see that, oh, that's what all this language is about. That's why you keep talking to me about and expressing goodwill, acknowledge me. You're creating peace. Because we don't have that modeled very much in this culture.
You know, if I come home discouraged someday from work and I greet Shannon and her energy is loving and supportive and uplifting, I feel that energy even more than the words.
Yeah.
I feel the energy of hope and compassion and caring and solutions. So it isn't, you don't have to worry about saying the right words. It's your energy that is being conveyed to the other person.
They'll fill your heart.
And so that energy either says, I give up too, this seems ridiculous, and also I'm as angry as you are that we haven't been able to reach solutions.
Or I feel so bad, what's happened to us? You know, I would love if we could move the needle a little bit towards peace and goodwill, and just have some loving acknowledgments and end on that note. What do you think?
Yeah.
Just to build it back.
It's the energy. And again, here as a peace master, it's very easy to have the energy of blame, of, well, I still think you're wrong.
Yeah.
You know,
and I'm right.
and you don't have to have a lot of words for that energy to be felt.
Yeah.
So,
you know, when you've been hurt in a conflict and someone said something, they probably don't know what it is they said that triggered your hurt. So you're sitting there licking your wounds and feeling defensive. You don't want to come back and be loving. You know, you need to take care of yourself, right? So when the other person or one of you is introducing the idea of peace, it's like, oh, we can actually step out of this. We can step up, and maybe this will help them feel that their wounds are being licked by both of you.
And let's get even more refined. Sometimes if you say the word peace, it actually sets off conflict, because the other person says, I don't want peace. I just want this problem to be solved.
Yeah.
Well, so you might want to consider, as a peace master, not using trigger words. And believe it or not, peace is a trigger word to somebody who doesn't want peace at the moment.
Well, I don't know. I really think it's a very high word, and it can be introduced at the right moment.
All right. Well, let me say
it's
some
a
things.
Reminder.
Let me say some things without using the word peace. We'll see if this helps at all, makes my case or not. I'm sorry that we obviously don't have agreement here, and you've expressed a lot of feelings, and I have too. But you know, I still hope that we can find harmony and solutions, because I want you to be happy. I want to be happy too, and I'm not going to give up hope that this is possible for us. So it's not right or wrong. I respect what you said about using the word peace can be powerful. But in that last bunch of words I used, I said a lot of things, but didn't use the word peace.
You can see we have a little bit of a different approach to it, but I love the word peace. I love to be reminded of it as a possibility, and that somebody else is holding that possibility. It calls me into it. So I would be someone who would welcome that word of peace.
And it's helpful.
It has dignity.
It sure does. And in that spirit, there's a million ways to approach peace endings. I love that phrase, many paths, one love. Many paths, one God. So there's a lot of ways to express love or peace. So should we take it one step harder? And this is when the peace process has fallen apart on the issues, but you still have respect for the other person. In other words, the issues, that's going nowhere. Has gone south, but you still have respect for the other person. Can you create a peace ending then? And the answer is yes, you can. So here's what that might sound like. I'm sorry we couldn't get to peace today, but I want you to know that I respect you. I respect you deeply for many of the qualities that you express. It's saddening that we can't agree on the issues, but there's something bigger than the issues, and that is our respect for each other. And that, I want you to know, is deep within me. And I also want you to know that even though we've failed today to get to peace, I am not going to give up on that possibility of peace for the future, because we're both good people and we both respect each other. And that to me is the cement that enables peace to be possible at some point. How do you feel?
I think these are very unifying statements, very high acknowledgments, and wonderful to include.
Yeah, and what? So in other words, this peace ending, you're creating peace with respect for the other person.
Yeah,
you're letting the issues go. You didn't get to peace. That's okay, but you can still have a peace ending where there's acknowledged respect for the other person. And you know what? That's the energy that's going to cause the other person to feel like, well, if nothing else, they're going to feel appreciated by you and they'll have more respect for you as a peace master.
Well, it's going to help their ego too, because the ego takes a hit when there's conflict, and we feel a little embarrassed and ashamed that we participated in conflict and that maybe somebody thought we were wrong and they looked down on us and now they're judging us. And, our imagination goes crazy with all the feelings. So to hear unifying statements and that this person is respecting you is going to help a whole lot.
Yeah. Well, there's two more levels of failure that are even worse than we've been talking about. And the next one is when the peace process has fallen apart because one party is emotionally violent or abusive, or let's just say there is no respect shown. There's no respect, there's emotional abuse. Can you create a peace ending in those situations?
Yeah.
And the answer is yes, you can. But this is where you shift your energy, because now you have to take a stand for the integrity of what peace calls for. So you might be saying to the other person, I'm not willing to continue the dialogue under these conditions. We're not going to get to peace unless we can use language that's not abusive of each other. And I wish you well, and I hope someday that you'll come back and want to establish peace on this issue. But I can't contribute to that today in this environment with that kind of language. And I wish you well, but we're going to need to stop this session now until we can both be in a place where we're using loving language to each other.
Mm-hmm. It's a good way to set a boundary, and it's a loving way to do it. It's not creating a standoff. Well, you're going to talk to me like that, then you're going to contribute to the fire. This is soft language, and it helps the feelings. It helps the heart, both hearts.
And you notice I said, instead of saying, we're not going to be able to continue the process until you stop using this stupid, violent language.
That you always do.
I said that we can't continue this dialogue unless we're both using loving speech.
Yeah.
Now, you're not admitting that you've been using hateful speech.
Yeah.
You're just creating a situation more of equality that we both need to be doing it. And it does soften the blow and creates more respect.
Yeah.
But it still says, in a peaceful way, we can't continue unless there's respect shown with words and actions. So that's a peace ending.
Yeah.
even though and it may be that that's the peace ending that then stops the session. And you may be the one and you likely will be, that needs then to stop the session. I mean, you might say, do you feel we can continue using language that's honoring of each other?
That's good. Yeah.
And if the other person continues being abusive, saying, you know what, let's just call this off for today because this is not good for either you or me.
Yeah, it's
and then
damaging.
You're calling it off.
Mm-hmm.
And that's still a peace ending.
Yeah.
Because you're not calling it off with anger. You're calling it off with dignity. All right, so this is kind of the worst peace condition, and that's where no peace ending seems possible because the other party refuses to have a conversation, or they've slammed the door and walked out of the room. We've all experienced that. That would seem like the end of the peace process when somebody has done that. So you can still create a peace ending here. You don't rush out the door trying to get them back. But
let them have their space.
Yeah. This is when you turn inward to your own heart and you tell yourself, I wrote down some words here. I just want to read them to you because this is the gist of what I think at a time like that, it's important to be telling yourself. I am proud of myself for even trying to create peace. I'm not responsible for this failure. Despite the way this ended so badly, I'm going to continue to hold blessings for all parties and let my heart forgive myself and all others. I'm also grateful to know that a peacemaster is a success just for trying to create peace versus any outcome.
Beautiful.
That's the way you create a peace ending in a situation where it looks like there's no possible peace.
You know, there comes a time where if it's over, where you come back to yourself. And this is some of the process of coming back to yourself. Also part of the process of coming back to yourself is remembering to practice good, healthy self-esteem. That's not ego, that's healthy self-esteem. It's very important for your well-being.
So note that in every single one of these dialogues, there's certain similarities that you as a peace master are taking the initiative, you're taking the leadership to use peaceful words that hold out hope and that show respect. So you're using loving speech yourself, one of the peace skills. And this takes away the edge of conflict. And it's important for us to be honest about something. To be a peace master takes extraordinary restraint.
Ooh, yes.
And composure.
Yes. Patience.
So you can just plan on the fact that you're going to fail a lot. You know, I loved what you said to our grandson, our 5-year-old grandson, the other day when he was making mistakes. Do you remember that?
Yeah.
And
yeah, he's really hard on himself.
He was angry at himself for making mistakes.
Yeah, he's just trying to color, and it's like I just put the crayons down. I said, "Listen, do you know that you're going to make a lot of mistakes? I make mistakes. Mama, Daddy makes mistakes. Scotty makes mistakes. Everybody makes mistakes. That's how we learn. So I want you to make a lot of mistakes." And he laughed. He thought that was funny. But to give him permission to be and to express and to try, because it's not failure. It's effort, and it's important. It's wonderful.
Yeah. So right now, we're going to talk about something because these are the peace endings. But it's very clear, the more you talk about these and the tougher the situation gets, that you cannot create a peace ending unless you feel peace within your own heart. Because if you're angry, good luck at using all these words of loving speech and respect. So I think at the core of creating a peace ending is the ability for you as a peace master to be more at peace in your own heart. So we're going to, and this is not about the other person. Just like envisioning peace, the very first skill, this is about yourself. You don't need two people to create a peace ending. So then just forget that easy out. Well, she wouldn't create a peace ending, so how could I? No, you can, even without her involvement.
Because you need peace.
Yeah. So we're going to talk about now some ways for you to bring your heart into more peace. And I love this. The first way is internally, when you get off base as a peace master, where you feel angry, you can see it's either slipping away or it has slipped away, or all of a sudden you remember, oh, I forgot about the whole peace master thing. So you can say to yourself, this is internal dialogue. Oh yeah, getting these feelings out with such intensity is part of the peace process. Now I remember, this is what looks so terrible now is actually part of the peace process. And let me back off my emotions now and start. What are you supposed to do when the feelings come out? Oh, you're supposed to listen with compassion. Whew, I don't feel much of that right now. Let me get in touch. Let me just start listening, even because I know it's the right thing to do, rather than trying to make my point. So
listening to your own feelings, is that what you're saying?
Yeah, listen to, this is your own private dialogue. You know how we think a lot of things, even as we're looking at the other person? Mm-hmm. These are the private things. And you can be thinking to yourself, you know what, I don't have to win this argument. This isn't about winning. I would rather choose to be a peace master. I don't feel like that, but I know that's the higher road, and that's my goal. So let me give up my argument right now. And Shannon, tell me more about your feelings so that I can understand. Just that shift allowed you to then, and then Shannon's going to look at you like, well, what happened? Well, the energy shifted. You shifted back into the role of a peace master as distinct from the role of being somebody involved in the conflict.
So let me just understand this correctly. The person is now gone that you had the conflict with. They're down the road headed off, right?
No.
Oh.
No, you're thinking these things right in the middle.
Oh, while the conflict
is taking place. Yeah, that's thank you for clarifying that. We think lots of thoughts. Usually in a conflict, what we're thinking
is you're an idiot.
And we're thinking, whatever she's saying, I'm getting my arguments ready to rebut it. And as soon as she stops talking, I'm going to tell her why she's an idiot and what my thoughts are.
And I've been waiting a long time to unload this.
So that's private internal thinking.
Yeah.
So that same internal thinking can be, oh, I can give up this anger and having to win. Is this argument, winning this argument, more important than our relationship?
Yeah.
Well, no, obviously. So let me soften. So all of this is happening internally, that you're regaining your position as a peace master, which is acknowledging that it comes and goes. It's not, the more the stress there is, the more it's going to go. It's easy to be a peace master when when there's no conflict. I mean, that's a no-brainer. But when there's conflict, that's when we take on the mantle, the energy of being a peace master. But doing it with a great deal of recognition that there is failure. So internally, when you get off base, bring yourself back and soften back into the role of a peace master. That makes sense? Another way to bring peace to your heart, and I think I've learned this more from Shannon, I have to say I'm very grateful for this, is practicing remembering your soul identity. Because I don't believe that you would be listening to us right now if you weren't in touch with your soul mission. There's something that says to you, you have a high calling and that you see yourself as a love being and as a peace master. We're all peace masters in process, but that soul identity to me is your higher self, your highest self, who you really are. I learned that. I have learned more about my higher self from Shannon. You want to add anything?
Well, you know, it's always helpful to pull back and see the big picture. Regardless of this tiny little mistake or this conflict, in 6 months, you won't even remember what you were mad about. 5 years from now, you won't have a clue. And yet, there's still these feelings. So when you pull way back and you remember who you are, your soul is more than an ego. Your life is more than just a human experience or a conflict with a person. And remember who you are in the big scheme of things, and the path that you're on is an eternal continuum, a journey that is one of great dedication and great effort to become all that you possibly can be and to be the highest self that you could possibly imagine. And no doubt, your highest self today is a lot better than your highest self 5 years ago, maybe even a year ago, and certainly more than 10 or 15 or 20 years ago. We know you, and you're growing just like we are. And so it's helpful to pull back and remember, okay, where this little conflict is in the big scheme of things, this is one opportunity to try to express the higher self and bring that in for them and yourself, and to do the best you can with that. That's really what's at stake.
And in that, to me, you're acknowledging, yeah, I am a peace master, and that's my highest way of being. And I'm maybe evolving and learning, but that's who I really am. I want to read some of these. We're having some chats going on while we're talking. And here's what one person is saying from Barb. I think any word that is synonymous to peace is good. Perhaps start with the word harmony, then end with peace. If you're feeling that peace, might not be what the opponent will respond to. Test it out. And yes, what Betsy said, energy and body language is vital. So I think I must have missed some earlier chats. Yes, yeah. I did. Yeah.
Body language, yes. Tone of voice.
But also body language and tone of voice is important.
When you express yourself from your heart, there is a tone of voice, and the body language will follow,
I tried peace with a coworker who didn't want peace. She didn't appreciate being confronted, so her lips were pursed and his foot was tapping away. I used calm words, took responsibility for things, had calm body language, but she was still furious for being asked to come and speak to me. Things ended up with no peace, sadly. Well, that's okay. Yeah. You're trying, and that's when it's important to have peace within yourself, that you took the steps that were necessary. And maybe you've heard some words today. I think it almost turns the tables when you say this, when the other person's angry and doesn't want peace, and you keep talking about peace, it's like you're thrusting it down their throat. Mm-hmm. But when you change gears and say, what I hear is that you don't want peace, and that's okay. The most important thing for me, I want you to know, is that I respect you and I appreciate you. Mm-hmm. And I hope eventually we can get to grounds where we feel good about each other and about this issue. So you're not trying to hold on to the outcome. Let go of the outcome. There's something much deeper than the issue. I agree with what you said before. You'll forget the issue a couple of years from now. There will always be people in conflict that are choosing not to choose peace, yet we can still can, and down the road, in hindsight, those other angry persons may think back to the experience and glean from it at a later time. Well, that's thoughtful. So let's go on here to some more ways of creating peace in your heart. I feel good at just talking about these things.
It's beautiful. It's a beautiful conversation we're having.
Well, remember one of the peace skills was being loving and detached observer. And we had some practice learning how hard it is to be detached, but how important it is. So this next thought is to practice ongoing detachment. Now,
as best you can.
As best you can. I'm going to give you an example from my life today. I'm in real estate, and I spent a lot of time working with a certain couple. Love this couple, and showed them homes and everything else. And the worst thing that can happen to a real estate agent, that happens frequently, is that a couple that you're working with goes into an open house, falls in love with the open house, and instead of calling you to represent them, because you have developed this team, they just turn to the other agent and say, oh, I'd like to buy this house. And then they call up and tell you, I really just want to tell you how happy I am that you've been helping me, but I also want to tell you I bought a house this afternoon.
Without you.
So that happened to me as I was developing this session. So it's interesting how my feelings were not, I was not at peace when this happened. And I had to continually work to detach myself from the outcome, and detach myself not just from the outcome, but from feeling bad about the outcome and feeling bad about this couple.
Yeah.
So there were like a lot of things to detach from, but I found myself writing notes to them, I'm happy for you, but I'm sad that you didn't call me, which was like assuaging me. I didn't send that, fortunately, until I got within 24 hours where I realized, this stuff happens. They're not mean. They didn't do this intentionally to hurt me. They just fell in love with the house, and they're a lovely. And so I got to the point where I was detached enough where I could feel happy for them.
Yeah.
And that's when I wrote email, said, I'm happy for you.
Attachments create suffering, and they have desire built in them. And when we really want something and we really have great desire for an outcome that, you wanted to sell that house and you didn't want them to go off and buy from somebody else, boy, you could be miserable with that attachment. I mean, that could have gotten you for the next week. Rehearse it. Regret, remorse, anger, for what? Life is full of changes, and it's not going to be the same tomorrow. And it's not going to work out the way you think it will or the way you hope it will every time. A lot of times it doesn't work out the way we hoped or thought it would. And so to be flexible and loose and detached from all these outcomes so that you can remain in your center means that you get to remain in your higher self. And there's nothing more important than that. You get to be your own self.
This is a good example of the peace ending doesn't involve the other party. They didn't know about my suffering and all my changes as I was going through these changes of detachment. This was about me finding peace within my own heart so I could have a peace ending. And so that I can have a good relationship with them down the road.
Yeah.
But mostly have a good relationship with myself.
Yeah.
All right. So practice ongoing detachment. Not easy, but that was a good example. Another way to create peace in your own heart and to be prepared to create a peace ending, especially when you're being taken advantage of or somebody's bulldozing you or there's a lot of strong language being used and you're being pushed, is to set boundaries. It's interesting. By setting boundaries, it doesn't mean you're not a peace master, because peace masters need to set boundaries. Look at the United Nations right now, has got 200,000 peacekeepers in 16 countries setting boundaries so that people won't create atrocities on other people.
Yeah.
That's being a peace master. And setting boundaries has an energy. Here's a little thing that I'm in real estate and it's consuming. People are always after me, wanting my attention. And so on our calendar, Shannon and I have lunch every day together from 11:30 to 1. It's blocked out on my calendar and has been for 24
Yeah.
years. And it's been the most happy, fulfilling thing we've done because I set this boundary so that in the middle of the day, Shannon and I have this hour and a half of peace where we can go out, have conversations like this that we're having, and people try to break through those boundaries all the time. And I'm saying I can meet you at 11 or at 1. And I just I set those boundaries. Not angrily, I set them to protect our relationship and my well-being and our ability to have a time together that is soulful. So this may not seem like creating peace, but boundaries protect not only yours, but other people's emotional and sometimes physical well-being.
Setting boundaries is a very important part of setting equality. It means my needs are just as important as your needs, and your needs are just as important as my needs. Sometimes that needs to be stated, or just setting the boundary is the statement of it. So you don't want to be walked over. You want to be able to say, no, I don't think I'll participate in that, and be able to make that no stick. I remember reading in a book, can't remember which book, I'm sorry, but it was an example given by a woman who had been told she had terminal cancer. And she had a calendar on her refrigerator, and every day, every morning at breakfast, she'd put another X, another day gone. She's counting down the days that she has left. Pretty gruesome. But a friend called and said, I'm going to do a garage sale. I always ask you to come be part of it. You're so important in organizing it. So can you come help me next weekend with the garage sale? And she was inclined to say yes. She always said yes to everybody. She never said no. She never set a boundary. She just always, yes, I'm available to anything and anyone, anytime. And so she looked over at her calendar before she answered, and she saw all those X's. And she saw her life leaving. And she turned to the phone and she said, no, I can't. And she couldn't believe she was saying that. It was such a reverse of energy that she's ever done. She actually stood up for herself. She made herself equally important as the woman who was giving the garage sale. And her cancer went into remission. It was that plus some other realizations very similar to this. But you can see how we treat ourselves gives the body direction. It gives every cell in our body direction. And it's really important to practice this. This is one of the self-esteem things that you want to learn to practice, is setting boundaries, speaking up and setting boundaries. You can do it very lovingly.
And as a peace master, you may need to be setting boundaries to protect somebody, other parties that are part of the peace process. Protect them from abusive language, or even protect them physically if needed, but this is the role that you're taking on. All right. I think this next one is a tough one, and that is being visible. Because, everybody wants to be, loving people want to be peace masters. But being a peace master is a visible occupation. You can't do it without being visible.
Yeah. So you might be inclined to hide. We all hide to some degree. So let me ask you something. On a scale between 1 and 10, 10 being highly visible, to what extent are you visible in the world? And that doesn't mean that you're known or famous or anything like that. Just the people who are around you, do they know you? Do you let them in? Do you let them know really who you are? Or are you hiding? So being visible is a big part of loving yourself and expressing healthy self-esteem.
Yeah, it is. interesting here, Lisa is saying, what if you say that you respect someone and they say, if you respect me, you would do X, Y, and Z? That's an interesting one, isn't it? So let's both give an opportunity to think about this. In the peace process, people naturally put demands on the other person. And so I might say to them, I do respect you, but that doesn't mean that I agree with you. And to me, the most important thing is that I want to understand what your needs are and understand what you think the solutions are. And I would like you to understand my thinking and what I think the solutions are. We may end up not even finding that we have the same solution. We may not be able to agree on a solution, but I can still feel that we can respect each other, even if that happens. So to me, respecting you is not about doing what you want any more than you respecting me is doing what I want you to do.
That really is not the definition of respect at all. It's the definition of control more than anything else.
Very thoughtful to ask that.
Yeah.
So next on this opportunity to get more peace within yourself is to, and we've talked about this, to practice ongoing forgiveness. You can't forgive yourself enough. Don't beat yourself up. Creating peace is not easy. There's a situation, sometimes and you know what happens? Peace, somebody comes at us like, well, if you respected me, you would do X, Y, and Z. And it's like sometimes you can't remember what to say until you're taking the shower the next morning. You think, you know what I should have said at that point? So,
and furthermore,
it's we're put on the spot sometimes, but we don't come up with what we might come up with if we had time to reflect, which is why when Lisa asked this question, I was reflecting within my heart, what is the truth? What's the inner truth going on here? I was allowing, rather than getting caught up as I got to say something, I was internally reflecting, what's the truth here? So you, as a peace master, you're not under the gun when somebody else is putting you under the gun. You're under your own energy of finding solutions within your own heart. So forgiving, keep remembering that peace is a process, not an outcome. You can fail over and over. And part of forgiving is, remember, it's natural to go in and out of being a peace master. Like I might have saying, you know, that's a stupid thing to say, that I should just do your thing. It has nothing to do with respect. And then I'm catching myself, oh, that's not very peaceful. So I can say, let me phrase that another way. You know, you can catch yourself. That's okay. Forgiveness.
When I'm in the mode of forgiving myself, I start watching my thoughts, because it's going to come in the form of thoughts, right? The feeling might form into a thought of, you might feel guilty. Ugh, I feel so guilty for what just happened. I just feel so guilty because I couldn't create peace. And maybe it's me. Maybe I'm the one. Maybe he's right. You know, I always do this mistake or whatever. So it's an inner reflection of first turning off the inner critic. The inner critic is going overtime if you're feeling guilty. And then watch guilt thoughts when they come in. And shame thoughts. Guilt and shame are sisters. So when they are brothers, whatever. When they come in, just say, oh, there's one of those thoughts again. Because now you're observing it. And now you're one step away from saying, that's me, I'm guilty. You're not saying I'm guilty. You're saying, oh, there's a guilt thought. And then you can say, well, I have a thought, but the thought doesn't have to be true. Every thought I have is not real or true. It's just a thought. And that thought is going around the world right now. Doesn't mean it's true. So just watch those thoughts and let them go. So you'll move naturally into forgiveness when you turn off the inner critic and you watch these thoughts and let them go.
Beautiful. 2 more ways to be at peace in your heart, and then we're going to close with our own peace ending for you. I think as a peace master, it's critical to create sacred time alone, because when you're with another person, you can't get to the depth of quietness and peace that you need to in your own consciousness, in your own heart. So take the time to create sacred time for yourself. And even if there's a conflict going on, you might be able to say, you know, I think it might be helpful for us to come back and talk about this tomorrow, because I know I'm feeling the need to have some sacred time to myself so I can get in touch with the highest possibilities for peace here.
Yeah, that's beautiful. You know, when I create time for myself, especially after conflict, I need to calm down. And I do that best alone when I'm not being barraged with words and ideas that I have to respond to. The demands are great when there's conflict. So to be able to be quiet and alone, calm down, reflect on things, what I said, why did they say what they said, where are they coming from? It creates a big opening for a lot of understanding. Plus you come back to your center, you become more balanced, your higher self is operating at a good, strong level, and you can come back into the situation refreshed with a fresh new outlook and perhaps some new things to contribute.
So last, but this is the big one, as a way of creating more peace in your heart. In our book, The Top 60 Love Skills You Were Never Taught, one of the love skills is to practice inner love talk. And I love that one. So what I want to talk to you today is practicing inner peace talk. This is the inner things that you say to yourself. For example, here's one inner talk. Well, I sure want to be a peace master, but I'm not very good at it. And I'm not sure that I ever can succeed. This is you're speaking to yourself. This is your quietly. But you can take that same thought and take it higher so that you say, I'm proud of myself for developing my skills as a peace master. And I forgive myself over and over happily as I learn and grow as a peace master.
I like that. Plus, personally, I don't name myself a peace master. I'm a person who expresses many skills, and peace mastery is that constitutes many skills. Love mastery constitutes many skills. And so I'm one who collects and expresses skills to my highest level as best I can. I'm always honing my skills to improve them, make them stronger. This creates a better character. And so I don't say I'm either a peace master or I'm not. I don't put myself on some perfect pedestal where I'm going to fall off all the time. There's no point in setting yourself up to say you're already a peace master. Peace mastery is a process. It's a practice. It constitutes a lot of skills that are worth investigating and expressing, because you'll love what happens. You think you've grown in the last year or 5 years, you won't believe how you'll grow with the peace mastery skills. They're just phenomenal to elevate consciousness.
And we are so grateful that you've joined us for this peace course. I mean, it really has meant a great deal to us. Your chats, your involvement, you're enabling us to step into our light, to share our highest thoughts with you. And this course is going to remain active 24/7 at thelovecenter.com, which makes me feel good too. And remember that you have, just by participating in this peace course, you've imbibed the essence and the skills of being a peace master, and it is within you. It's not something outside you're trying to get here. It's in here, practicing coming out.
I feel that, this is our peace ending now. So it's just meant so much to me that you have signed up. We've had a couple hundred people join us, over a couple hundred. Some listen later or watch later. but we're a community, and it just means so much to connect with you, and especially over this purpose, which is such a high, lofty, beautiful, meaningful purpose for all of us. We're all spiritual light workers, and it's just always a happy thing when we come together. And we have not only come together for this course, but I feel like we're connected forever. I'm just so grateful that we could have this time together. Thank you so much for all your emails and your text messages and your chat room comments. Some of you said so many lovely things to Scott and me, and your words of appreciation really go to our hearts. We appreciate that so much. We love you.
You know, we're all in this together.
Yeah.
We need each other because obviously our planet and beyond needs the energy of peace mastery, and it needs lights who are happily taking up the mantle to express these skills and the qualities. So
whenever you're in conflict, here on, we're with you. And I feel like we're all together. We're all connected together. In fact, there's some physics that has been proven in the last few years that once two particles have come together, even if they're separated at the opposite ends of the universe, they're still connected energetically. And I know that's true about us. So I feel like we'll always be connected, and remember that in your conflicts, because our energies are still holding the bond for your highest sense and for the best sense and outcome of the process for peace.
And here's what Charles says, who is definitely a peace master and light master. Thank you, Love Peace Master Scotty and Shannon. Congratulations to you, the Love Center, and everyone who has and those who will participate and go forth and radiate love, light, and peace. Love you deep. And we love you all. Thanks so much. And thank you for all the peace that you're contributing.
God bless.
That's wonderful.
Namaste.